can see me okay. I know that these videos are somewhat sporadic here, but we're going to try to cover ground over time with God's help, one piece at a time. I think last time we left off talking about the different dimensions of the idea, and I believe we left off saying how from the depth comes the length and the width. So the deeper the idea, the more width, in other words, the more details, the more facets, and also the greater the depth, the more the length. So, for example, a deep subject like medicine has a lot of details and takes a lot of examples to really get a hold on, right? To really understand and to grasp the concept. Whereas something like tic-tac-toe, right? Some simple game like that, there are a few details, but not many, and you don't really need to resort to all sorts of analogies and explanations in an attempt to get someone to understand it. It's pretty straightforward. So we see that according to the depth will be the length and the width, and the opposite is also true, that in order to grasp the depth of some concept, we really do have to know the details, and we have to look at the examples as well, try to break things down. So let's read that insight together. Okay, some of this may be review. Forgot exactly where in the text we left off, so I'll just start from Kach omek hamuskal, so it is with the depth of the concept. Hu bechinas etzem nekuda, so that's the essence of the point of the concept. Kamoshehu, as is. V'nikra omek hamusag, and it's called the depth of that which is understood, the depth of the concept. Shekol ma shenispashet behezber hahasaga l'kol tzad barochav gadol b'kamar pratim, that everything which spreads forth in the explanation of this concept to a number of sides, right, or angles, like different ways to look at it, with much width, b'kamar pratim, with a number of details. And not just the width, but also v'kein la'orech b'otzem ha'yirida, and so too with regard to the length, with the profound descent of the concept. Here we're talking, of course, not an intellectual descent, but a conceptual descent, right? So what we mean is that the example that you give to explain a concept, like for example right here we're talking about rivers, right, a body of water, that doesn't seem to inherently have any relation to this intellectual abstract. Although we know ultimately, in order for one thing to be an example or an analogy for something else, it does have to have some commonality with it, right? It does have to express that concept tangibly. So, for example, you could say the three dimensions of an idea are like the three dimensions of a river, and show the connection, the depth of the river, the depth of the idea. Right, the width of the river is like the water spreading out at the place of the source, wide. So this is like the different angles of the concept. The length is, distant from the place of the source, but allows, people distant from the place of the source, like a deer running by or something, to drink from the water and benefit. So too, the length of the river, or the length of an idea rather, is like the concrete expression of the concept that allows people who don't grasp it as is in the abstract to appreciate it concretely and then abstract it. But you can't say like, oh, let's talk about the three dimensions of an idea, and our example will be a rock sitting on a pile of dirt. It's like, okay, what's the connection, right? So ultimately, for one thing to be an analogy for another, of course, there has to be some sort of relationship there, but again, it's just like the abstract versus the concrete in a certain way. Yeah. Looks like someone should have got more than 5.5 hours of sleep, right? Right, the profound conceptual descent. That's what the point was. And also the height, to understand from it something much higher than it. So like we said, once you grasp the essence of the idea expressed in a more concrete way, you can abstract it to understand the subject in a more abstract or more general way. So for example, after you grasp addition of whole numbers, which is one of the most concrete, straightforward expressions of the essence of mathematics, which is why we learn it first, right, in terms of our intellectual development. Then when we understand that, we can move on to subtraction, then multiplication, division, algebra, geometry, calculus, right, and so on and so forth. So there again, you have the essence of mathematics, which is, not really defined by any of those. Those are just expressions of the essence. But the point for our discussion here is that once we understand it in a more concrete, straightforward way, we can abstract it and go up. That's the concept of height, to a more general expression of the same essence of mathematics, and so on and so forth, all the way up, right? Hakol nimshach me'etzem omak nekuda, so it's all drawn down from the depth of the point. Kamo shehu noveh min hachachma nikra ayin, as it flows forth, as the concept flows forth from insight, which is referred to as nothing, and that it's the intangible expression of the idea, right? The abstract. Like you read an abstract in a paper before those long, concrete explanations. And as it is written, and a river, right, which the example we've been giving here, or we've been learning here rather, for understanding as a river, flows forth from Eden, which Eden is not just the Garden of Eden and the rivers going out of it, like it talks about in the Torah, the Bible, right, the Jewish Bible, but also Eden is related to the word for pleasure. And we'll learn later on in the book especially how, again, Bina, the concrete expression of the essence of the idea. Chachma, insight, the abstract perception of the idea, or expression.